Hi, welcome to the Nocturnal Space Workshop. You alright there, love? I'm Trej and this is Iris, and in this video I'll be making a robot for the Bill Making Stuff's Big Bot Bash, where you make a robot using his junk bot generator from his game Bangarang in the Gutterlands. Bangarang in the Gut. It's a mouth. You try saying it. Bangarang in the Gutter. You make a robot using his junk bot generator, basically. Come on, wake up, darling. So, Bill's been talking about this collaboration on his channel for a while, and I've been looking forward to taking part and eagerly awaiting details. He confirmed in a video a few weeks ago that it was going to be using the standard Bangarang generator, no female mods, and the aim was to get the bots built by the end of March. I'm not on any social media or anything like that, so if it was posted somewhere else I wouldn't have seen it any earlier. No, I wouldn't have. No, yeah, hello. Big yawn. Now, a few weeks might be loads of time for some people, but I work night shifts. That's why this is the Nocturnal Space Workshop, doing 12-hour shifts, and my wife Amelia, believe it or not, she likes spending time with me too. So after walking Iris and, other daily grown-up nonsense, I don't always have a lot of time left for hobby stuff. I realised I only had 3 weeks to put something together and do all the pesky editing stuff so I could share it with you lovely people. I've got to be honest, I was tempted to cheat and cut corners, by cherry picking things that I thought might be quick and easy to do, but that just didn't seem like it was in the spirit of things, so I didn't do that, and neither should you. I'll put a link in the description to the jump bot generator. You simply roll the d20 a bunch of times to get your bot's bits, and then you go and build it. The only rule is, no 3D printed parts. I've got a 3D printer, don't I, Iris? Yeah. It's in the garage covered in dust because it's never been used. Well, I'm off to bed now because I've just finished one of those night shifts, although we dropped unlucky because the clocks went forward due to daylight savings here in the UK, so we only worked 11 hours instead of 12 last night. Yeah. With all that in mind, here's what I came up with for the Big Bot Bash, and I wish all you people a lovely morning as I say good night. I shall go and get you some breakfast as I have my supper. Oh, bless her. She's just woken up. First I grabbed a d20 to roll with. This is my box of guest dice for when people come to play D&D or something like that and they forget their own. Don't you hate it when that happens to you? First, roll for the body. 20, which is death. Nice, excellent start. Then the head. 18, scary. Okay, scary and deaf. Very good start, my mind's already working. Arms, 10, double jointed. Interesting. Hands, 2. Claws are easy. Okie dokie. Legs, 14, centipede. Cool. And last of all, flavour, 20. Is that meat? Okay, lots to work with, lots to think about. I'd better get to work. I started going through some old model parts looking for some cool bits to kit Bash with, but I see this more as a scratch building project, so I didn't really want to use the existing parts. I want to build it from scratch, So I grabbed this little MDF wooden disc to use as a base, and I just started putting it together without a plan. I began by using this pasta maker to flatten out some Das clay to cut up. I thought, if I just start making some shapes, it'll come together as I go, right? The only idea I really had was for the centipede legs. If I make a bunch of semicircular shapes, they can stack together next to each other as legs. I put the leftover clay through the pasta maker again, not because I knew what I was doing, I just wanted to see what would happen. I'm sure later in the video I'll claim it was all part of the grand plan, but I was just playing with it like a child playing with a Play-Doh set. I was still just making shapes, using this old tray from a cookie box as a mould. I figured I'd be able to use it as part of the body or something later. Like I planned all along. If you don't try stuff out, you never learn new things. You and I, dear viewer, have an advantage over me in the video. You've seen the thumbnail, we all know what it ends up being. Will it be tall and thin or stocky and asymmetrical? I had no idea at this point, I really was just winging it and making it up as I went along. For the death body I did think it could be a Grim Reaper type construct with a skeletal frame. Then I thought it could be decorated with skulls and such, like some kind of totem of death. That led me on to thinking of some kind of sarcophagus or containment unit for someone in stasis, but I decided that might be a little bit too much like a Space Marine dreadnought, or even like my offering for the last Monster Bash video. Then I thought it could be an urn, carrying ashes, or maybe even a full crematorium processing unit. All in one, bring out your dead, ashes while you wait! What if it's a robot that's supposed to dispose of diseased carcasses in some plague, but it's malfunctioned and now chases healthy people around trying to put them in its fiery furnaces? Maybe it's a zombie plague and it's been infected itself. Maybe that could be where the "is that meat" factor comes from. I also had to think about the scary face because that's very subjective, What scares one person could make another laugh. But I find the idea of a blank, expressionless face with unblinking eyes quite scary. You can see it looking at you, but you can't read its emotions. It looks kinda human, but you can't appeal to its humanity. It doesn't have any, like a snake. I thought I'd go with the crematorium idea, then it can feed bodies into the front end and ashes can be collected at the back. So it'd need long arms to reach, and I decided to take the double jointed arms literally, and gave each arm 2 joints, as well as allowing them to bend both ways. Okay, I was getting a clearer idea of what it's going to be now. A walking furnace with grabbing claw arms and a blank, uncompromising face. When it comes for you, there's no negotiating with it, no arguing. You're going in the fire to be turned into ash. I used some of the leftover semicircular pieces that I'd used for the centipede legs. I thought they'd be useful for the claws. And then I was trying to think of different furnacey pieces that could be useful, and every kind of furnace I'd seen in a film, like maybe in The Burbs or Nightmare on Elm Street. Didn't they see the furnace in one of them? Anyway, I just thought something that could be useful as a furnace for the body part, and then any little bits and bobs that I could build up on the top for the robot's head. Starting with this little bit, which is actually the nozzle from an old clogged up bottle of super glue. I do keep hold of a lot of old rubbish because you never know, it might come in useful one day. I'm just gently heating up and bending the inside parts from a couple of mechanical toothbrush heads. You don't have to do it in the darkness with a candle. I just thought it'd make for a good video. To be honest, I'd probably do it with a heat gun if I was just doing it for myself. I decided to use some EVA craft foam. I haven't actually used it before, but it seems quite versatile, so I thought I'd give it a go. Then to mark out where the rivets or screws are supposed to be, I used a sewing tracing wheel. I'm just building up the body really, building up layers and texture, that kind of thing. I didn't really have a plan as to what I was doing. I just knew I wanted those toothbrush parts to be part of the neck, something raising up above the rest of the body. Then the plan is to keep trying out different parts to see what fits. I think we've all got that bits box that's just full of random junk that we've collected over the years, to use as greeblers and things like that. Everything from bits of wire, paper clips, or those like little pokey bits that you shove into cupboards when you're making shelves and things like that. What are those pokey bits called? So it's time to dig deep and see what I could find in that for parts. I wanted the furnace to have a hatch that looked like a chomping mouth, and I had some old copper tape. I have some zigzag craft scissors, so I thought that might cut down the middle to make it look like pointy gnashing teeth, something like that. I thought it was worth giving a go. But I thought I could use that for thin layers and build up around it with EVA foam so it looks like it's in a recess. Watching the video back now, it looks like it was all done in one afternoon. It really wasn't. This was all put together in just like brief 30-minute periods over several weeks. Your hobby experience is probably similar to mine. Got a spare hour? Go and grab the clippers and super glue. It's not often that I work to a deadline though, although I've made some films that have needed props making to shoot on a particular day. But filming props just need to look good in somebody's hands for like 5 seconds on camera. They don't normally get scrutinised. Not that I work in Hollywood or anything. And I'm not making these videos where I'm talking to camera, I'm making indie films where I'm behind the camera. Now I say it out loud though, it sounds like a lot. Fitting all this stuff in outside the full-time job that actually pays my mortgage. But we're not here to talk about that. So instead I'll just try to keep up with what's on the screen and talk about what's on there. So there I am, sticking one of those greebler bits to another of the greebler bits. To be honest, that is a lot of what this commentary is going to be. There's a greebler bit, I glued it to another greebler bit, and then I used some activator to make the glue stick, and then there's another greebler bit, and I still you get the idea. That part, I don't know what that is. I don't know what a lot of these bits are. They did just come from general parts that I've kept from over the years. This is going too fast for me. How can you keep up with these kind of things? I really should have written it down and made a script. That's what sensible people would have done, I suppose. That's a little bit of a big paperclip, I think, actually, that's stuck on the side there. So I just want to make texture. So the little metal parts I was sticking on the side there, I just want to make texture that's going to build up. So once it's actually complete, there's going to be a few rods and things like that that might be hydraulics or something. So this is going to be like a cowl or an undercowl, I guess you'd call it. I don't know, what would you call it? It's going to be going underneath where the face is going to sit when the face goes on eventually. So there we are again, making the rivets with the sewing tracer. There's going to be a few of those on there, so I'm going to try and stop saying all the time. I hate it when I say So this is what I'm going to be using for the urn. I want to use a glass jar so you could actually see the dirt floating around inside of it. That's just the end from a pen. So first of all I'm going to stick the pen on, the end from the pen on, and then later the jar will get glued on. Obviously I won't glue the jar on first because I'll be painting the model. Yeah, I do use a lot of super glue at times, but that's what it's going to look like in the end. Cutting out a bit more of the EVA foam and making it just... I didn't use all this, I just wanted to get a bunch of strips made, and then I could stick it on as and where I felt I needed it. There I am, sticking it onto that base at the bottom, which You know, that was the plan all along, as I said at the beginning. There's a lot of little detailed parts that I was just sort of like cutting around, trimming here, adding there. If you don't know, baking soda and super glue is absolutely amazing. I use it a lot to fill little gaps and things, as I'm doing here. It sets instantly, and then you can file it instantly. It's just a fantastic material to use in models. So you will see me using a lot of the baking soda. I'm just sort of bulking it up, making it up as I go along, you know, improvising, I guess. Going back to the face I was talking about, I have an idea for something that I'm going to be adding, but I need to add it after it's been painted, much like the jar that I'm using as an urn. I'm going to be adding the face after it's all been painted, so as I'm building up the parts around it, you won't really see the face itself until it's all done. I'm adding the baking soda there above the little pen nozzle, because that's what's going to be the furnace, so later I'm going to paint that like it's fire coming out like a glowing orange kind of colour. That's another bit that I don't really know what it is, but I figured I can bend that around towards the front of the face and it's going to look like it's part of the mechanism or the holster, or you know, the apparatus that's holding it in place. This is where I thought that I'd actually glued that in the wrong position, so I had to snap it off to stick it back on. As I was adding the super glue here, you can see the activator reacting with the super glue to make these little cool crystals. That's not going to be part of the model, but you know, I just thought I'd show it because it looks cool. Anyway, back to the actual model then. So stuck the parts back on. This little hoop part is just to add more texture again, to make it look like there's some kind of upper part of lid or something, I guess, on top of the furnace area where the pipes are actually coming out. Again, another little bit that I just thought would be cool, extra texture for the harness, I guess, where the face is going to be. And then I filed down the top of the front of the white part that was on the top to add this little bit. Again, another bit, no idea what that is, but you know, I thought it'd be a cool little detail. So another one of the old mechanical toothbrush heads, just cut it into half because I want to use this for the somewhere above the arms. I didn't really know what I was going to do. It ended up being kind of like a chimney. So first of all, I just glued these into place. Again, bit of activator with the super glue, lots of super glue. Then using the end nozzles of some old super glue tubes, which are going to be the top parts of the chimneys. Again, super glue tubes, who knew they could be so versatile and useful after they've long since been discarded as actual super glue tubes. So in the go, here we have a couple of tubes. What I actually liked about these, looking at it now, I almost forgot until just looking back at this video, is it reminds me of the aliens from the Alien films, or the xenomorphs as people call them. They're not actually called xenomorphs, by the way. It's in the film Aliens, the sequel, the first sequel, one of the lieutenant, the soldiers, he calls it a xenomorph, but he's just trying to make himself sound intelligent, and then everybody sort of thought that's what they're actually called, and they're not. It's just what he calls it, and that's besides the point. Back to the big bot bash. Here I am, more baking soda with the super glue. Again, just bulking it up and making shapes. That's a little green tube there. That's just a bit of an old bit of green stuff that I made. Well, I didn't make it deliberately. I was making a tube for something else on an old project, and it's just been floating around on my work desk for quite a while. So I just want to add a little bit more in here. So this is what's going to be behind the face once it goes in. I just wanted something that's going to be making some kind of mechanism, like it could be part of the electronics or part of whatever the apparatus are that's actually holding it in place. Once it's actually finished, you can't actually see that, but it's okay, I know it's in there. These cocktail sticks, again, I wasn't sure just how much you were going to see them in the finished thing once the face is actually on there, but they are literally there to hold the face in place, so I'm going to be sticking the face onto those cocktail sticks once it's all done. To base the models, I have my own batch of all-purpose dirt that I make. This is instead of buying expensive craft sands and things like that. I mean, they're really overpriced. I mean, or you can go out and use like dirty dirt that you've picked up from the ground somewhere. So instead, just get the peppercorn and the coriander seeds, which are ground up, mix in some poppy seeds. This is just for different kinds of texture, and then the baking soda again because it sticks to the glue really well. And that's how I make my own personal batch of all-purpose dirt. And you simply just take the model, put it in a bowl to catch any overspill, put the glue onto the base, and then chuck on your dirt. It's as simple as that. Sometimes what can be cool as well is if you put bits of string or coconut fibre in there as well, and then it comes out like bits of twigs and things at this sort of scale. It looks really cool in the end. But that's it, that's done for the modelling at this point. It's time to paint, so here's a spray paint. I wanted the robot to be bare metal rather than to look like it had been painted. The best way I found to paint metallics is to dry brush over black. So after priming it with a kind of black spray paint, or rattle can as some call it, I used craft shop acrylics to build up light layers. Remember, when dry brushing you need to wipe off all the paint so you're just leaving a fine layer. I see people leaving too much paint on the brush, but I think that's called overbrushing and it's not the same technique. To dry brush, you rub off all the paint and you build up layers gently. Don't panic if you break your model, just stick it back on and call it battle damage. These paints were too thin though, so dry brushing didn't really work. Instead I used some makeup sponges to stipple it on, using different colours for the different areas. I just knew I wanted the body to be brass like the Royal Army of Oz, but I just improvised with what felt right in the moment. I also found these paints to be too sparkly. It looked like it was wearing fairy princess glitter makeup instead of representing a true metallic look, so I switched to a different type when I was highlighting. Although I now know what to use when I'm painting a fairy princess. After getting the base metallic coats down, I went around and painted watered down black into some of the recesses to pick out the details. I especially wanted those furnace door teeth to stand out, but all the little rivet details are important, adding to the overall feel. Mise en scène, they call it in the films, where you add details to the set to inform the story. You don't really notice them when they're there, but when they're absent you can feel something's missing. After the black wash I highlighted with some metallics again, the same silver that I first started using, not those metallic paints, but the silver that I first used, and also some gold. I actually got this off Temu, it was just a random set that I bought once and it turned out to be really good. I tried to be really gentle with the stippling so I didn't accidentally paint over where I just painted those black details, the number of times I've done that over the years. Then I went on to paint the base, which I just wanted to be like dirt, so you know, I painted it with a dark brown and then dry brushed over with an off-white. I also felt that the back of the bot was a bit bare, so I decided to give it a crematorium logo. I thought a flaming skull would be cool. The rule of cool trumps any kind of logic. I apologise for the focus by the way, I was too busy concentrating on the paint job. Skulls are easy to do, you just make a basic keyhole shape with a circle and a little square bit underneath it. Always start with a thin layer, using that same off-white I dry brushed with a second ago. Once the basic shape is down, it's easy to go over with extra layers and build highlights. For the flame I made a rough shape with orange and then highlighted it with yellow in the centre, because fire burns hotter in the middle and it's brighter where it's hotter. At least that's how it works in my mind when it comes to painting flames. When you're wet blending paint there's all kinds of different techniques that you can follow, but personally I just like to get the wet paint, put it on the model and then move it around until it looks how I like. I don't know, I don't really have any technique. You could make it sinister with frowning eyes, but I wanted friendly skulls like a South Park cartoon character. Cute, but not for kids. So I went for big friendly eyes. Giving it a little hint of an outline just makes it stand out from the background. It wasn't the intention, but I suppose these add to the death theme for the body too. To give you an idea of scale, these would fill a Space Marine shoulder pauldron. I was happy with them for a quick job, although one of them has a dodgy eye, but I figured I could add more layers and fix that later if I had time. Then I gave the whole thing a wash to shade it, mixing together whatever black and brown paint I had to hand with a lot of water. I save any excess for later use, and I'll be using a batch that I made on my last project. I just water it down and slap it on, dabbing it with kitchen paper to remove it from some of the raised areas while allowing it to pool in the recesses. This is why I water it down so those recesses don't become too dark. In other projects I might want it dark and use less water, but I want some of those metallics to shine through. Then I added more layers to highlight the skulls and fix that dodgy eye. I went over some of the metallics to make them shine too and cover where the stippling had crossed over. Then add another mud wash, mostly to get into the recesses. In a second I'm going to be using some watercolours. I just want to give you a heads up so it doesn't take you by surprise. For the most part though, it's just a case of adding layers, highlighting, shading, highlight again, building up several thin layers rather than just applying a few thick ones. That's for this normal paint, not the watercolours. I use watercolours to make some dirty rusty patches. Watercolours dry with a dusty look on models which stands out from acrylics and can make a nice effect. I mostly used orange first and then applied some spots of yellow. As always I just eyeballed it and improvised, moving the colour around, although it turned out much brighter than I wanted once it had dried. The handy thing with watercolours though, is they reactivate with water and you can go back to wet blending, or even wipe them off altogether, so I just played around drying and reactivating them until I was happy with it. Then I needed to pick out some of the details and bring out the metallics again. While I was highlighting the flames, I decided to add a little bit of red and magenta to the tips, just to make them pop a little bit. Now it's painted, I can add the robot's face and get the fleshy bits done for the "is that meat" factor. Is that meat? Okay, going back a few months, I needed to make some frogs for a prop in a film. For more information on my filming projects by the way, check out handmaderockets.com. Anyway, in the upcoming movie Doll in the Shadows, one of the characters handles a jar of pickled frogs, so we needed a jar of frogs, and obviously I'm not just going to go out and murder a bunch of Kermits. But I'd seen the Craftsman Steady Crafting YouTube channel making homemade silicone toys using corn flour, or cornstarch as I believe it's called in the States, and mixing that with sealant, and I thought that would be the perfect method to make my frogs. If you try it too, it's simple and effective, but I should have worn gloves like the Craftsman does, as it gets absolutely everywhere. So you take the silicone and the corn flour and you literally just mix them both together. So I'm using transparent silicone. I was supposed to set transparent anyway rather than white, because I was hoping that it may set slightly translucent, because I would like to shine through the little frogs in the jar. It didn't quite work out as I was hoping, but it did look kind of dull and not bright white like it would have done with white silicone. So it's a learning process. So I'd made one out of green stuff first when I'd put ball bearings in for the eyes, and then I'd made moulds from the green stuff one, so then I could make more from the silicone that I'd made. I used the ball bearings because I want that to stand out from the silicone, so when the little froggies are in the jar, the eyes would stand out so you could see the little eyes poking out, even though, again, it's a prop. It's only going to be on screen for a few seconds. You're not going to see it in that much detail, but it's these little details that if they're not there, you'll notice, and then it'll just be like little white things floating around in the jar. But as you can see, a lot of them actually stuck to these moulds. Das clay is not the best substance to use for moulds like this, but I think they turned out quite well. I was really impressed with them, and I was left with some miscasts that I could use for other projects. Again, not a real frog. Don't get triggered by that. So that was the idea I had for its head all along, is to use one of these old frog heads for its head. And then for the other Is That Meat parts, I figured if I take some of the Mod Podge, this is the glossy type of Mod Podge, and mix it with some fake blood. The secret ingredient to fake blood, by the way, is to not just use red, but to use a little bit of green as well. I learned that, I believe it was Tom Savini I saw taking that by the film special effects legend Tom Savini. Anyway, mix it up with the fake blood, then because the Mod Podge will set translucent, then again hopefully translucent, then this would hopefully then make the white strips appear a kind of more of a reddy colour. So there it is looking at you. Hi there. Okay, so I just sort of moved it around. Really what I wanted the head to look like it was kind of like an optic nerve like an eyeball with the optic nerve being sort of wired into the machine. So that was the effect I was going for. And then I just kind of went around and I thought, right, where else can I put little bits of the Is This Meat, where the fleshy parts. It really was just a case of making it up as I went along. A little bit more onto the pipes there to make it look like some of the blood or something like that was oozing out of the pipes. Then just to join up the seam a little bit. For the backstory, because every model needs a backstory, I decided this robot comes from a firm that uses biological circuits, because it's cheaper to grow resources than it is to buy them. So the firm, let's call them Prodigious Robotics Incorporated. They're concerned more with functionality and cost cutting than aesthetics. When Prodigious Robotics build a bot for a job, they're guaranteed to deliver it at bargain prices. It might make small children cry, but the owner will smile when they look at the receipt. When their sister company, Prodigious Chemical Waste Logistics, accidentally dropped some containers they were carrying for the government into a town's water supply, the firm promised it was a simple, innocent mistake. The fact it saved Prodigious Chemical Waste Logistics fuel and export costs by dumping the containers in the lake instead of transporting them to be disposed of correctly, well, that was a surprise and absolute coincidence. The firm reassured us this via a post on X, formerly known as Twitter. When the civilians started getting sick and dropping dead, only to rise again with an insatiable hunger for human brains, the army was sent in to contain the zombie outbreak. It turned out that full body dismemberment only exacerbated the problem, as then they had undead hands scuttling about the place, and headshots didn't seem to have much effect either. Incineration seemed to be the only solution. Luckily, Prodigious Robotics Incorporated were on hand with crematorium robots at a cut price. Designed to clear animal carcasses from grazing grounds after the great hoof and mouth cullings, they were perfectly equipped to dispose of the leftover zombies and bits still crawling around on the streets. However, once they were dispatched and started pumping undead fumes out of their chimney spouts, they created a thick polluting fog, a miasma of death, which contaminated even their own biological circuits. Once infected, these robots began to develop a taste for human flesh over that of the undead, and proved to be an even greater threat than the original zombie outbreak. Well, the model's nearly finished now, so you know the drill. Click like and subscribe, and as I said at the top, I'm not on any social media, so if you want to have a chat, just leave a comment. And do something creative just for the fun of it, even if it goes wrong, especially when it goes wrong. Remember, you're perfect just as you are and people love you. Look after each other, and look after your pets, because they love you too. Here's the gallery.